Chapter 68 to 69. Chaos reigned at the Fuyuki City Administrative Office. Despite being in the Shinto district, the office was in a state of frenzy over the events unfolding in the Miyama district. Mayor Himuro was frantically trying to keep up with the situation. P.S. Michiyuki Himuro is the mayor of Fuyuki City in Fate School Life. He is the father of Kane Himuro. "A giant!" someone cried out. "There's a giant in Fuyuki City!" The mythical monster had become a reality. Does that mean Ultraman exists too? Someone else wondered. Come quickly if you exist. As the mayor sat there, he couldn't help but recall the words of his mentor when he was appointed to serve in Fuyuki City. His teacher had told him, in case of any strange events, reach out to the local priest of the church first, and then the head of the Tosaka family. However, Himuro realized that Risei the priest was now a victim of assassination, lying unconscious in the hospital. And the head of the Tosaka family, Tokiomi, was also similarly affected, with one of his hands being amputated and him on the brink of collapse, making it impossible to communicate with him. At that moment, Himuro remembered his teacher's secondary advice. In case you can't reach them, seek the assistance of the 4 exorcists. This testimony dates back to a few decades ago when the mayor was a passionate young man. At the time, his teacher imparted a final lesson before passing away. The 4 exorcist families still held some influence then, but over the years, they had lost their prominence, with only the Ryugi family remaining. Using his authority, Himuro easily reached out to the Ryugi family and entrusted them with the task at hand. The head of the family repeatedly assured him that they were ready to act. Though somewhat relieved, the mayor took no chances and also alerted the Japan Self-Defense Force and the U.S. military stationed in Okinawa for additional protection. It remains uncertain whether this decision was wise or not, but in hindsight, contacting the Ryugi family proved to be a mistake. After hanging up the phone, the head of the Ryugi family issued a strict order. No one is allowed to go to Fuyuki City under any circumstances. As an exorcist family, they were acutely aware of the dangers that Fuyuki City posed, and they knew that what lay ahead was not something a human body could endure. It was a suicide mission. Waver contemplated to himself, acknowledging the daunting adversary before them. How can he remain so composed and level-headed? He thought. If I were in his shoes, I would surely be trembling with fear and unable to think clearly. He voiced these concerns to Iskandar, who responded with a warm smile. It matters not if he is but a child wielding the power of a servant, he said. In this moment, he is a hero, and that fact alone supersedes his age. Irisveal interjected, if Castor's words hold any truth, what sort of future lies ahead for this child possessing a servant Saint Graf? Her curiosity was piqued by the prospect. Iskandar responded with utmost conviction. There is no doubt in my mind that he shall become the greatest hero of this era. Waver can't help but feel envious of such a high evaluation. Would I be able to handle it if I were in his shoes? He wondered. He yearned for a life with glory like that, but he didn't realize that was far from Shirou's true desire. The shining exterior could be seen by anyone, but who knew the bitterness he may have held in his heart? Everyone had their own story, and no one was truly listening. Why must you torment a child? Skathak wielded her dual spears, moving swiftly with dreamlike movements to dodge incoming noble phantasms. Gilgamesh sneered, Why do you bother asking such meaningless questions? You deceive and harm the child just as much as I do. We're no different from those outsiders. Do you really need to ask why we're targeting him? He is but a mere bystander, an unwitting spectator thrust onto the hero's stage, Skathak countered, her spears moving in an elegant dance as she deftly deflected the incoming barrage of noble phantasms. Bystander? You have lived for so long, yet you still fail to understand, Gilgamesh taunted, his voice dripping with derision. It is all a facade. That boy was not chosen by fate, but bears the aspirations of the nameless, imbued with the most sickening power of the mongrel, the strongest restraining force. "So that's the truth about the anomalies," Scathach said, her eyes flashing with understanding. "It seems like the long years haven't completely rotted your brain," Gilgamesh sneered in response. "But why would the counterforce do this?" Scathach asked, clearly bewildered. "It doesn't make sense." "You'll have to ask Alaya, not this king," Gilgamesh replied as he opened the gate of Babylon and unleashed a vicious assault. Scathach skillfully parried each of the incoming noble phantasms, but just as she gained the upper hand, the space around them began to ripple and fluctuate. Suddenly, the chains of heaven materialized out of nowhere, ensnaring the valiant warrior queen in their unforgiving grasp. "It's over, mongrel," Gilgamesh proclaimed as he tightened his grip. "As a punishment for laying your hands on my treasures, I sentence you to death. I am not a god. This is useless to me." Gilgamesh snapped his fingers, and the noble phantasms rained down on the warrior queen. But just as it seemed like the end, a brilliant red flash exploded into view, and Scathach emerged from the storm of noble phantasms, her twin spears aimed directly at Gilgamesh. This was a strike from a spear wielded by a human reaching the realm of the gods, a deathly blow that had killed countless divine beings. Boom! Another building was buried in the rubble. Spartacus roared as he swung his indestructible sword with tremendous power, causing several buildings to collapse. He was a monster in human form, wielding such incredible strength. Shirou was leading Spartacus, carefully calculating the time and the route they were taking. The path they were following had previously been cleared of citizens by Iskander's troops, so it was a deserted area. By doing this, they hoped to reduce the number of casualties and losses. "Roar! Roar! Roar! Roar!" Spartacus bellowed as he swung his massive sword at Shirou with a deafening roar. The weapon was lifted to the sky, only to come crashing down with a sound like the heavens themselves were splitting apart. Boom, 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 boom! The ground trembled with each impact, sending shockwaves that lifted cars more than 10 meters high and carved deep gashes in the ground up to 10 meters away. Despite the chaos around him, Shirou remained calm and focused. He was calculating the distance and time with lightning speed. Spartacus gave chase, his towering form obliterating everything in its path as he rampaged through the city. Buildings crumbled and fell at his feet, their once beautiful structures reduced to rubble in the blink of an eye. The works of human civilization were decimated, creating a stunning yet destructive display like a fireworks show. With an ear-splitting roar, Spartacus lifted his sword high and brought it crashing down toward Shirou. The sky was covered by dark clouds, shrouding Shirou and making him feel oppressed. Despite this, he pushed forward, his mind working and his body running. Fear could no longer control him. The shadow of the swordswoman flickered as she wielded her invisible sword, standing crosswise before the giant sword. With a resounding clang, steel shook, the sound rippling through the surroundings like a shockwave. Artoria was instantly crushed by the massive power, her body flying like a comet and heavily crashing through a building. Blood streamed down her face from her forehead. But even as she was battered and bruised, she rose to her feet, gripping her invisible sword with renewed determination. Her sword was filled with power, reflecting her unwavering belief. Diarmuid, meanwhile, was a blur as he leapt from building to building, raining down blows on the giant with his twin spears and disrupting its movements. His shorter spear, the yellow rose of mortality, proved particularly effective. But Diarmuid was cautious, as he remembered Shirou's warning about the black mud. He must not be contaminated by it. Shirou trusted the knights and placed his life in their hands. He picked up his earpiece and contacted Kiritsugu, asking, "How's it going? Have the bombs been buried?" "Done in 15 seconds, Kiritsugu replied. "Good! I'm bringing him with me. Estimated time is 19 seconds, Shirou informed him. "Then I'll start withdrawing. Kiritsugu said, before hanging up the connection. What? Is that all? Shirou asked. If I stay here, you'll kill me, Kiritsugu said, hanging up the connection. Shirou crushed the earpiece. He had one more thing he didn't say. If Spartacus was defeated, Kiritsugu would kill him too. If Spartacus wasn't killed, he would be killed by Spartacus. If Spartacus was killed, he would be killed by others. What a nasty reality. His hatred for Gilgamesh had reached its boiling point, causing his hands to clench and his heart to burn with anger. Gilgamesh! Shirou led Spartacus towards the shore, but at that moment, the sky was suddenly filled with the sound of explosions. Several fighter jets sliced through the black fog, firing missiles at Spartacus. Boom! Boom! The missiles hit their target, causing a thunderous explosion and bursts of fireworks-like flames on Spartacus's body. Shirou looked at the fighter jets with a sigh, realizing that the military was now intervening. This was not good news, as it meant the impact would become even greater and the effort would be in vain. Roar, 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 roar! Spartacus let out a long roar as he lifted a cylindrical building off the ground and threw it at several fighter jets that were flying above. The jets could not dodge in time and were crushed, turning into brilliant fireworks. Boom! Shirou had to act quickly, knowing that the situation would become dire once the military was fully involved. He led Spartacus to the riverbank in the Miyama district, and with his innate skill, clairvoyance, he could see the X marked by the bomb that Kiritsugu had buried. He also saw Iskandar riding his horse, carrying Waver and Irisveal not far away. He was aware that Kiritsugu was hiding nearby, holding the detonator and waiting for Shirou to lead Spartacus into the pit. Although Shirou did not want to admit it, he knew that his actions were aligned with Kiritsugu's plan. Shirou was leading Spartacus toward the location where the bomb was buried. Ah! Spartacus let out a rage-filled scream and began pursuing Shirou. The massive, burly figure chased after him, causing the ground to tremble with each step. Shirou sprinted past the X point, then pivoted and watched as Spartacus rapidly closed in on him. Here it is! The moment was almost upon him. Closer. Closer still. But then, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh! Additional fighter jets appeared in the sky, raining missiles down upon Spartacus. The explosion and assault captured Spartacus's attention, causing him to veer off course. This is not good! Shirou's heart pounded with anxiety. At that moment, Artoria appeared, soaring overhead and standing in front of Spartacus. The invisible sword in her hand blazed with terrifying energy, the wind swirling around it. The compressed wind surrounding the holy sword was suddenly unleashed, hitting Spartacus like a powerful hammer and forcing him back several steps, right onto the X mark. This is it! Shirou raised his arms and bellowed, "Grant me the power to unleash my noble phantasm!" Crimson light bloomed, and the second command seal vanished, granting Shirou, who had only a small reserve of magical energy, another chance to unleash the full power of unlimited blade works. Almost simultaneously, Kiritsugu hit the detonator. Boom! The equivalent of 52 kilograms of C4 and TNT detonated in an instant, obliterating the unsteady riverbank and causing Spartacus's body to plummet into the wreckage. Taking advantage of the moment, Shirou recited the incantation for unlimited blade works with a loud voice. However, roar, 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 roar! Spartacus was incensed. Despite being partially trapped by the collapsing earth, he was still able to raise his massive sword high overhead and bring it crashing down towards Shirou with a thundering chop. The cold wind from the blow felt like a physical blade, pressing down with the weight of a mountain. But Shirou remained composed, continuing to recite unlimited blade works. He put his trust in the two knights, and they, in turn, did not let him down. The holy sword and dual spears, fueled by their wielders' unwavering beliefs, swept across the sky and blocked this devastating attack. Bang! A muffled thud echoed across the battlefield as the immense pressure caused the ground to split open beneath Artoria and Diarmuid. Poof! They both spat blood as their arms were shattered by the tremendous force. Artoria's gauntlets also burst open from the impact, but they stood their ground, and thus a chance at victory presented itself. Yet these hands will never hold anything. So as I pray, unlimited blade works. As the incantation was completed, unlimited blade works trapped everyone present in a swords graveyard. This place... Irisveal gazed in awe at the endless field of swords, feeling both stunned and shocked. But as she gazed upon the countless giant gears in the hazy sky, she felt a suffocating pressure in her chest. Reality Marble was a manifestation of one's inner world, and the appearance of this place spoke volumes about the person who created it. What kind of person? No, what kind of servant had Shirou merged with to have such a desolate and hopeless inner world? "Artoria!" Shirou cried out. She nodded, her expression serious. The moment had arrived. The King of Knights summoned all her strength and raised the holy sword high. The light from the holy sword intensified, converging into a brilliant beam that shone unlimitedly, bathing the area in its radiant glow. All those present were struck speechless by its beauty, as if they were witnessing a miracle unfold before their eyes. The hero who wielded the sword was a symbol of hope in a chaotic era, shining brighter than the darkness that surrounded them. This hero had persevered for 10 long years, emerging victorious in 12 battles, a feat unmatched in the world. Their glory transcended time and space, making them eternal. The Sword of Light, Excalibur, was the embodiment of the dreams and lifelong pursuits of all fallen warriors on the battlefield. With pride in holding its will and a sense of justice in carrying out its beliefs, the King of Knights declared the true name of this miracle. "Its name is Sword of the Promised Victory, Excalibur!" The light blazed, turning into a surging flash that rose into the sky, creating vortices and swallowing the giant and massive gears in its path. The black mud was evaporated instantly, every molecule of the brutal giant exposed to the scorching impact. The giant let out a roar as it was consumed by the light of destruction. Standing next to Iskandar, Irisveal watched the blazing light, and a smile spread across her face. She turned to Iskandar and asked, "Do you see it, King of Conquerors? This is the glory of Saber. After beholding this brilliant radiance, can you still deny Saber's path to glory?" Iskandar snorted at Irisveal's question, but the expression on his face was not one of disdain or insult. Instead, it was a serious and sorrowful look, as if he were looking at something tragic. He sighed and said, "It's precisely because she carries the hope of an entire era that she wields such power, but it's also precisely because it's so dazzling that it brings heartache. Who would have thought that the person bearing such a heavy burden is just an innocent girl who loves to fantasize? She's not fit to be a king because her ideals have led her to a dead end." Roar, 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 roar. Suddenly, a dull roar echoed from the end of the light. "How could it be?" Irisveal covered her mouth, her face full of surprise. The light, which brought hope, dissipated, revealing the despairing reality. The upper half of the giant had been completely destroyed, but the lower half still remained. Foul-smelling black mud flowed on the giant's lower half, constantly condensing and expanding at the wound. "That mud is repairing Berserker!" The shocking revelation left all the heroes stunned. Shirou asked Artoria in a hurry, "King of Knights, can you use Excalibur one more time?" Artoria replied with a worried expression, "No, my magical energy is not enough. I need a command seal. I can't contact Kiritsugu from this place." Should he open unlimited blade works? No. If he did, The range of casualties would only increase. The black mud had already repaired Spartacus's spine and was spreading, contaminating the world. Everywhere it passed, even swords were melted into pure magical energy and consumed. They couldn't wait any longer, but all the heroes were at a loss and didn't know what to do. Shirou was also at a loss and didn't know what to do next. "Help me!" "Who's there?" Shirou asked, wondering if he was really hearing something. "Help me!" "Spartacus?" Shirou wonders aloud. "I'm suffering so much, I don't want to be a tool of tyranny anymore. I was meant to be a sword for the weak, a hero to guide them to freedom. Help me, please. I can't take this suffering anymore." Shirou gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. Go? Not go? What a foolish question. His resolve hardened as he knew what he must do. "I've received so much help from him so far. I simply can't stand by and watch Spartacus endure any more pain. I won't let him suffer any longer." With determination in his step, Shirou rushed forward to help his friend. "No, don't go!" Artoria cried out, trying to grab Shirou, but Diarmuid stopped her. The thought of watching a child, especially one so similar to someone she once knew, marching toward his death was unbearable for her. "Stop! Don't go near that mud!" Diarmuid warned. "We can't touch it!" "I can't just stand here and watch a child go to his death." Artoria gritted her teeth and followed with determination. However, the next moment, they both froze.